Hi, and thank you for your time. This is Kyle Lassiter, one of the partners here at Ancora Software. And I wanted to take a couple minutes to introduce one of our technology solutions called AncoraDocs. It's an advanced capture engine that's utilized to really capture any number of different documents. But in this case today, I'm going to be showing you the system utilized to capture invoices. The engine itself can be deployed on a desktop, on a server, or it could run in the cloud. Each instance of the software is identical, so no matter how you get to it, it's going to look the same. In this case, I'm going to log in as an administrator. There are username and passwords, so we can set up security, user rights, what somebody has access to, where the data that they collect goes to, really any number of different options available from a security perspective. As I mentioned to you, I'm going to be showing you invoices today, but the engine is utilized for a large number of different documents. There's really no shortage of options. Medical space, in the banking space, there's particular things, surveys, HR documents, the list goes on and on. So please be aware that although I'm focused on invoices, you could use your imagination, and any document, structured, unstructured, semi-structured, that needs to be read, our system has the capabilities to do that. The engine itself has just been installed, so in essence this is the first time it's going to see any documents. Ahead of time I had to set up where the images that are collected, where do they go after they're processed, also where does the data that we've collected, where does that go to, how many different sources, maybe your document management system, your accounting package. And in addition to that, I had to tell the system what data to collect off of the invoices that we're processing. So in this case, simple things like the invoice number, the vendor name, what it is that we purchased, the individual line item descriptions, the total of the invoice. That's literally the setup that I had to do. This installation could be done in about 10 minutes, and the software could be up in production that quickly. The idea when we designed AncoraDocs was to create a system that was incredibly simple to use, even easier to deploy and train folks on, and have you up and running so you could generate a return on investment right away. Because I'm running this in a demonstration mode, you're going to see some things that traditionally you wouldn't see in a production environment, like this first screen here, the Setup tab. Along the bottom we have a series of tabs that you can see here. The next tab in the sequence is Capture. Because we're processing images, we need to obviously get those into the system. There's a couple different ways we can do that. We can grab images directly off of a scanner, so we can power any scanner, twin compatible scanner, and bring those images directly in here. More often than not, folks are utilizing folders that we'll watch. So if they're running images through a multifunction device, and we're going to watch that folder. If they're processing images that may be associated with a email, we can grab those attachments automatically out of those email addresses and pull them into the system. So really any way that you're receiving documents, paper-based, electronic-based, we can assist with getting those into the system and processed. I'm going to utilize the ability to look out and grab files that may be processed through a lockbox, a backfile conversion, and I'm going to reach out and just grab a few different images so that you can see the power of this system. Once I've grabbed those particular images, I can review those in this capture screen, and then once I'm done processing that, I would hit the Q job button. Again, not something that would have to be done in production, but from a demonstration perspective I needed to click this button. What that does is then brings up a quality control screen. This can be brought up at a couple different locations. It's either brought up when the images are first put into the system, and you want to make sure that there's no blank pages, or maybe you want to associate these pages together. You'll also see that it can be brought up at the verify page, so somebody that's not even associated with the capturing of the documents can identify them as being an attachment or being associated with each other. So what you're seeing here is an electronic way to manage the documents that you've brought into the system. So let's say this middle page was an attachment to this first page. I could literally identify this page by simply clicking on this attachment button. Now this will stay with this first document, but it won't be OCR'd as part of the process here. Or in the case where maybe these are two pages that go together. This is the first page, this is the second page of a multi-page invoice. I could simply click these and associate them with together. Now you can use barcodes or separator sheets just like the traditional methods, but in this case we can also identify them electronically, reducing the overall paper. These are 3 individual transactions. Just going to say these are okay to move along. And the next tab in the sequence is the OCR tab. We do 2 different OCR engines, one that is ours and then another that's from Nuance, it's OmniPage. Those engines gather the information, do the best job they can in verifying the information that was collected, and then those results are presented for somebody to verify. So that step just took a few seconds, and I move along to the verification tab. This is usually the tab where the data entry clerk that used to type the invoices now is doing more verification. Their particular responsibility is to make sure, much like that first time around, that there are no quality control issues, everything looks good, we move it along. Then that individual is presented with the actual invoice itself, and then the information that was collected off of the document. So because this is the first time we're seeing this particular invoice, the system needs my help. As you can see, it did a good job of pulling in all the other information, but it didn't have an anchor for the vendor name. So my job now is to just teach the system where the information needs to be collected for future reference. You can see in the middle of the screen I'm moving my mouse around. We have a patent on a technology called Click Simple. The idea is I can just hover over the region that I want to collect the information from, simply click the mouse button, and now you can see that it's identified that vendor name. I can now tab through the individual cells if I chose, and you can see things like the date have been adjusted from April to 04. This is really from a measure for exporting of the information to ensure that the data that we've collected can be exported in the formats needed by your accounting package or your ERP or the document management system. So I could tab to the individual items, making sure everything looks good, which it does, or I could hit the F4 key. And what's going to happen is the system's going to automatically take me to the next area where the system needs my help. And again, it's looking for the vendor name. Simply click on that, hit that F4 key again, takes me to the final document. I click on the vendor name, pretty simple, straightforward stuff, hit the F4 key, everything is finished. I'm done processing those invoices. Again, just installed this, first time processing these through, only takes a few seconds to move through those documents. So what I'm going to do now is actually go back and add those exact same pages that we processed before, and I'm going to show you how quickly the system can move through these, but in addition to that, how it learned the specific information that was relevant, like the vendor name, and made the adjustments necessary to grab that information. So we'll quickly look through here. It takes 10-15 seconds to process these. Again, nobody's ever going to watch this. This is something that happens behind the scenes. Nobody even knows this is happening. Can be run at night, can run whenever images are received. You determine the rules associated with when this processing happens. And then once that information has been processed, it presents us for the verify. Now you can see that the information that we collected the first time around, the vendor name, now shows up. So it did learn that information. If when we're looking up the vendor name, we want to do a lookup against a database to make sure that that vendor is in the system, maybe we want to pull back a vendor number that also corresponds with this vendor name, all of those database lookups can happen. Most often folks do those on the vendor name. Quite often they'll do them on the purchase order number. They want to make sure that the total of the purchase order is within a certain amount of the invoice total. In the case where the system needs my help, it's going to take me to the appropriate cell. Because we're doing the calculations on a line item level and a summary total level, so we're adding all these up to make sure that it equals the 424.03. In the case where the system needs my help, I just make a small adjustment here. It's going to learn that information and it's going to let me move along. I'm going to hit that F4 key I was telling you about before. It remembered the vendor name in this particular case. No additional information needs to be collected there. and then finally it takes me to the last invoice. Again, I could tab through the individual cells, looking up the corresponding information. What I'm going to do here is actually create an error really quickly. I'm going to change this 7 to a 0. The system's not going to let me go any further. It's going to say, hey, this doesn't add up. Please fix this before you move on. So what I'm going to do is hit the F6 key, and we've created a calculation screen. And this calculation screen looks at the individual line items that have been collected and hyper zooms next to them. And then up here at the top it shows you the difference. It's showing there's a delta of 7 cents, that somehow we can't move along with this. So what the verifier would do is just draw their eye to the corresponding cell, adjust the item that they see where the error is. Up here at the top you can see the difference has been now calculated to 0, showing that we can move on with this. The corresponding information that was collected now is handed off to this individual cell, and I can finish up this particular invoice. That's the extent of the invoice processing system. Easy to install, easy to get up and running, literally can be in production within a couple of minutes of the software being installed. And now, obviously because of the learning engine, the engine will remember the interactions that I had with it. The final step is to export the data out of the system. We have a number of different connectors built so that that can happen seamlessly behind the scenes and hand off the data that was collected. I appreciate your time and thank you. The team here at Ancora would be more than happy to do any additional demos for you, process your particular invoices you'd like. We're just looking for the chance to work with you on whatever the project is corresponding to. Thank you for your time.